Hi all, it's Vanessa Love. Alright, so thought I'd talk a little bit today about disturbing images in art. Alright, so I hope that you've hopefully watched enough of these, know that my definition of art therapy is about creating something that expresses your inner world. And uh, some people's inner worlds aren't pretty. And the point isn't to make a pretty picture. It's not meant always to, have a nice, peaceful, pastoral, what does one of my clients call it? There's a particular word for it where it's just nature. That may not be where someone dwells all day. If a person has depression or they have trauma, they don't feel good about themselves, their world isn't a nice beach. It might be a dark, damp place. It might be filled with, craters of self doubt and, flashbacks and triggers. So no, it's not going to be a pretty picture. Um, and I know some people have asked, like, well, what do you do when you, like, what do you do like, when you do come across an image that's disturbing or an image that, makes you uncomfortable? Like, well, I'm a therapist. There's not much that I've experienced that has made me uncomfortable. Um, I'm like, oh, Jesus, when's the last time I was uncomfortable? It's usually my clients hitting on me, you know. But, like, there's nothing usually that's been in artwork that I've been like, oh my God, so disturbing. I'm just like, okay, we'll talk about it, you know. Um, and I know that someone had asked me about censorship. I was like, well, why the hell would I censor anyone? If I've had a client do this, and I'm like, if one of my clients wants to draw dicks all day, I am not going to sit here and be like, now today, you can't draw dicks. You know, maybe there's something in that. Maybe it's a teenager pushing the limits. Maybe it's, a traumatized woman trying to make meaning or have understanding of, this male anatomy that, is, if you've had trauma, especially in sexual trauma, can be very, very, perplexing, and can, some people who have, had assaults with, that involve people with penises, like, um, don't fully understand it, and don't want to be around that, and don't understand, like, don't, I mean, sometimes it's very difficult for their sexuality for themselves. So to have someone draw a penis, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you can draw everything except your anatomy, another person's anatomy. Let's not get into that. Like, no, maybe someone really does need to get into that, and like, and push through, and figure it out. Um, so I don't think that there is censorship. There shouldn't be censorship in therapy, in art therapy, because there just really doesn't need to be. There should be a open expression of all of yourself. And so if, dicks, vagina, you know breasts or whatever are a part of that expression, I'm not going to sit here and be like, can't do that today. um, some people, as soon as you're like, here's the line, someone's going to be like, well, I'm going to go over here. All right. Some art therapists have had the experience of having people, um, kill them in the drawings, and I'm like, yeah, of course that's gonna come up in counseling, especially when you're counseling kids. They're pushing your buttons, and on top of that, they don't always want to see you. Like, it can be very difficult for kids to come into therapy. Like, I mean, I know that that there have been some kids that I'm just like, I don't know if they fully understand, what I'm here for. And that can be very, very difficult, because, like, how you have to do a lot of rapport building, but on top of that, how do you fully explain, to, like, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, like, here, hey, I'm here to support you. This is why I don't always work with kids. I work with their families, because if I'm teaching them skills like how to calm themselves, I want to make sure that their parents know about that in order to have that reiterated at home. Because if they're just learning it in the therapy session and then never using it at home, I mean, therapy session is no use then. It's not going to get anywhere. So yeah, that's why I choose to do it that way, and I think that it can be very difficult for kids to talk outside of their outside of their family. Like, if they feel comfortable with one family member, you know, kind of like let them talk. Yeah, I do think that it's helpful to have someone that they're comfortable with in session. Makes that rapport building way easier. But yeah, I mean, like, that's it can feel like an attack if someone's drawing something that's like, here's your murdered body. Oh, okay, how did I die? Instead of being like, no, you can't express that. That's not what we express here. I think the only thing that I know of that other people have, well, I mean, I've had the experience too, is like, I had someone come in and she wanted to, like, do a craft kit. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to do this because I think it'll help me to feel better, or it'll raise my self-confidence, or it's going to, like, I want to do this to, like, build better relationships. It was like, I just want to do this. So, again, one of those sandbagging techniques where it's just like, I don't really want to talk about myself. I don't really want to get involved, and, like, put myself in a vulnerable position. So I'm going to create crafts. And there can be some form of crafts that, like, you can do, and you can be like, hey, like, we're gonna do this thing, and it's gonna be this way or that way, like what I was saying, like, oh, this is to build better relationships with others. This is to like if they're making a gift for someone in particular, like, oh, I want to give this to my mom, oh, I want to give this to so and so. All right, cool. Like, I can get behind that, but, like, just creating crafts just to kind of create that barrier with your therapist, like, no, how about let's not. So yeah, I mean, like, that can be a way that someone can just kind of go, I don't want to, be in therapy. All right, well, here we go with the defenses. And, some therapists deal with that in their own little way. But yeah, I mean, there really shouldn't be any censorship in our therapy program. I would imagine that some people, excuse me, that some people in group therapy might have some restrictions on what's acceptable because of the issues that other people are facing in those groups. Like, if I had a group and one of my clients was constantly drawing dicks, but it was to instigate issues between themselves and another person, or be provocative towards another person, I would probably stop that, because that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to know someone's vulnerability and be like, haha, fuck you. Like, that's not okay. So, like, in a group situation, it might be very imperative to either talk about it or to, kind of restrict someone about that, because it can cause other people damage. I'm not going to be damaged if someone draws a bunch of dicks. Like, not a thing. But yeah, as I said, like, other people might. Anyway, hope that was helpful. and I will talk with you soon. Thanks for liking and subscribing and watching these. All right.